stars looked like pinpricks of ice through the observation glass of Arcadia Station. A research outpost suspended in the dark seam between two powers that didn't trust each other. Enough to share a border, neutral ground, the diplomats called it, a place where two species could finally talk without aiming guns across the table. Ronan Cade didn't believe in neutral places, not after 2 wars and 1 evacuation that left him pulling bodies out of a burning shuttle. Places were only neutral until somebody decided they weren't. He stood near the back of the conference chamber, with his arms folded across his chest. Station security blew crisp against the grey steel walls. His eyes kept moving door, vents, Valorian delegation, human delegation, door again. Old habits didn't fade, they calcified. Across the long table, the Valories sat like sculptures carved from stormlight tall, long-limbed, their skin shifting between cobalt and violet depending on the angle of the lamps. Their eyes carried a faint, steady gold that made it hard not to stare back, like looking into a small sun you didn't feel on your skin. At the head of the table, Captain Mara Ellison held the negotiations together by sheer will and caffeine. Her hair was silver and pulled tight, her voice steady even when the room tried to shake it loose. 3 months of talks, and they'd gained nothing but sharper tempers. The Valori wanted access to human fabrication techniques, modular printers, rapid alloy growth, civilian-scale manufacturing. Humanity wanted what the Valori guarded like sacred fire, jump-drive geometry, the kind of math that made distance an inconvenience instead of a war. Simple trade, to strength swapped, except the Valori treated it like charity. A Valori commander leaned forward, posture elegant, expression cool. His name badge shimmered with translated script, Commander Theron Kier. His voice had that musical cadence Valori always seemed to carry, as if their language had been designed to be spoken inside a cathedral. Your people rely on tools the way hatchlings rely on a nest, Theron said. Where is the honor in hiding behind metal? Captain Ellison didn't flinch. We call it efficiency. Thorin's mouth curved almost a smile, almost contempt. Pretty words. The soft always polish their weakness. Ronan felt his jaw tighten. Soft. He'd watched friends bleed out in vacuum because someone had promised an airlock was secured. He'd carried a rifle so long it felt like an extension of his spine. Soft wasn't a word anyone with a memory would use for humanity, yet here it was. Tossed like refuse onto the table. He kept silent anyway. His job was safety, not speeches. Then he noticed the younger Valori woman seated beside Theron. She'd said little all meeting, but she watched everything, hands, glances, the way people leaned forward or held back. The kind of attention that belonged to someone who could read a room. The way some people read a map. Her name on the briefing had been Sale Vexari, diplomatic attaché. Now her gold eyes lifted straight to Ronan. For a heartbeat they held each other's gaze. Something like curiosity flickered in her face. Quickly shuttered, then she looked away, as if she'd decided he wasn't worth the time, or as if she'd decided he was. The meeting dragged another hour, words piling into nothing. At last Captain Ellison called for a recess. Humans exhaled. Valori rose in a single smooth motion, all of them moving like they shared a pulse. As the chamber emptied, Ellison's voice stopped Ronan. Cade, a word. He approached her workstation. Up close he could see the strain around her eyes, the tension in her neck that no uniform could hide. "I need you to escort the Valori on a tour of the agricultural ring," she said. "They requested it." Ronan blinked. "I'm security, not a tour guide. Dax is off shift. And I need someone who won't swing at a diplomat when they insult our entire species." A tired smile, a commander's plea wrapped in humor. Ronan sighed through his nose. "Yes, ma'am." 20 minutes later, he walked the corridor with Valori behind him. Farron had declined the tour, thank every god with a name. But Sale came, along with 2 silent guards whose hands never strayed far from their belt rigs. "The agricultural ring sits on the outer spin," Ronan explained, keeping his pace measured. "Hydroponics, aeroponics, and a small soil bay for anything that hates nutrient mist. Rotation gives us 1/3 gravity." 1/3, Sale repeated, head tilting. "You were born under full gravity." "Earth," Ronan said. "Montana. High plains. Wind that never shuts up." Her eyes warmed slightly interest. "Genuine this time. You've seen plants under a real sun." "Yeah. And yet you left." Ronan shrugged. "Space gets in your blood. Once you learn how big the universe is, you start noticing how small you were pretending it wasn't." One of the guards made a low sound approval or surprise. Sale moved closer as they walked, quiet as a shadow. "Do you miss it? Your soil?" He considered. "Sometimes. But I'd miss this too if I went back." The quiet, the impossible scale. They reached the agricultural access hatch. Ronan keyed the code. The door slid aside, releasing air that smelled like damp earth and green life. Rows of plants rose under full-spectrum raised tomatoes, dwarf citrus, leafy greens. Vines trained a long lattice. Water trickled. Fans hummed. For a moment, Arcadia Station felt less like metal and more like a place meant to hold living things. Sale stepped forward, eyes widening. She reached toward a tomato plant with careful fingers and brushed a leaf, as if she expected it to recoil. "Remarkable," she murmured. "You bring life into the void. We go where we need to," Ronan said, "and we bring what keeps us human." That was when the alarm hit. Red light flooded the corridor outside. A synthesized voice cracked through the station's speakers. "Warning. Pressure loss detected in Sector 7. Emergency bulkheads activating." Ronan's body moved before thought caught up. Sector 7 was to corridors over, but they were in the outer ring. If bulkheads sealed wrong, whole sections could become dead zones. "Main corridor," he snapped. "Move." The Valori hesitated only a beat before following. Ronan ran, boots slamming metal, heartbeat climbing. Behind him, the Valori kept pace with insulting ease, long legs eating distance. They rounded a corner, and Ronan saw the bulkhead ahead, beginning to close. To massive panels slid from ceiling and floor like jaws. Beyond it, the main artery corridor leading inward, safer zones, shelter nodes. Between them, 30 meters, and a door that didn't care about species pride. "Run," Ronan barked. The Valori surged ahead. To guards slipped through the narrowing. Gap. Sail glided after them, graceful even in crisis. The last guard dove through. Ronan reached the door as the gap dropped under a meter. He didn't think. He just acted. He dropped, slid, and jammed both hands into the shrinking space between steel and steel. The mechanism caught his forearms. Pain detonated white. Immediate, intimate. Hydraulics designed to seal against explosive decompression bit down like a vice. Ronan braced his shoulder against the lower panel and shoved upward with everything he had. Muscles screamed. Tendons felt like they might tear free. Blood slicked his skin where metal edges bit. The door shuddered and stopped. For a second, time balanced on agony. On the far side, Sale stared at him with wide golden eyes. The guards were safe. She was safe. But Ronan's attention snapped past her back down the corridor behind him. A maintenance crew, 3 human workers. He'd seen them in the ring earlier. Toolkits on their hips. If this bulkhead sealed, they could be trapped in a section-losing atmosphere. Go around, Ronan shouted through clenched teeth. Get help. Crew trapped in 7. Sale didn't move. She stood frozen, watching him hold back a machine built to crush. Go. He roared, voice raw. That broke her spell. She turned and ran, guards following. Ronan held the door as his arms shook violently. His vision narrowed at the edges. Each second dragged like an hour. Then hands grabbed him from behind. The maintenance crew faces pale, eyes wide, together. For humans pushed up on the panel. The pressure eased enough for Ronan to yank his arms free. They dove through the gap. The bulkhead slammed shut behind. Then with a sound like thunder, Ronan lay on the floor, gasping, arms mangled, blood streaking the deck plates. He'd never been so relieved to feel pain. Pain meant oxygen. Down the corridor, Sale stood still, staring at him like she'd just watched gravity reverse. In the medical bay, Dr. Juno Park patched synthetic skin over Ronan's torn forearms. Her expression was the practiced exasperation of someone who'd seen heroism. And stupidity were the same face. "You're lucky you didn't snap both wrists," she muttered. "What were you thinking?" Ronan's voice was quiet. "I was thinking 3 people die if that door seals." Juno didn't argue. She just sealed another cut and shook her head. "Keep these dry. Come back tomorrow." Ronan left with bandaged arms and a dull ache that ran all the way to his teeth. By the next day, the station felt different. Valory. Eyes followed him in corridors, curious, offended, unsettled. Word moved fast in enclosed habitats. Stories moved faster. Negotiations resumed that morning with tension sharpened to a blade. Commander Theron pushed harder than before, rejecting every proposal like it personally insulted him. But the tone had shifted, less dismissive, more challenged, like he was trying to reassert a narrative that had cracked. Finally, Theron rose to his full height, shadows gathering under his frame. "Enough circling. You claim equality. Prove it." Captain Ellison's brow lifted. "How?" "The traditional way," Theron said. Gold eyes sweeping the humans. Combat. Unarmed. Controlled. Submission or unconsciousness. Injuries accepted. Silence landed like a weight. A human would lose. Everyone knew it. And backing down would fracture the treaty beyond repair. I'll do it, Ronan heard himself say. Every head turned. Ellison frowned. Cade, you're injured. I'll be functional by tomorrow, Ronan said. And someone has to stand up. Thorin's expression shifted satisfaction, perhaps, or the faintest edge of respect. The human who halted the door. Acceptable. Noon tomorrow. Cargo Bay 3. That night, Ronan trained in his cramped quarters with his friend Matteo Sands, a security officer who'd learned to fight in places where floors moved and walls lied. Matteo watched Ronan scroll combat footage. You're insane, he said. Theron Keir has a decade of honor duels. Ronan flexed his sore hands. Then I'll be his first bad day. Matteo's jaw tightened. Be serious. I am. Ronan met his eyes. This isn't about winning points. It's about telling them we're not ornaments hanging off our machines. Matteo exhaled, then stepped into stance. Fine. Leverage, endurance, ground, control. If you try to trade power, you die. They worked for 2 hours until Ronan's arms trembled and sweat turned cold on his spine. After Matteo left, a soft knock came at his door. Ronan opened it to find Sail in the corridor alone. Her presence there without guards felt like a small rebellion. May I enter? She asked. Ronan stepped aside. Inside, she studied his. Simple quarters, a bunk, a desk, a tiny window framing endless black. Your life is spare. Out here, extra things become extra problems, Ronan said. Sit. She sat with that effortless grace, hands folded. For a moment she seemed to search for words. I came to warn you, Sail said at last. Theron Keir is one of our finest. I figured. He will not soften his strike. He cannot. To hold back is dishonor. Ronan gave a small, humorless smile. Then I won't ask him to. Sel's eyes narrowed. Why did you volunteer? Ronan thought of the conference chamber, the insult hanging in the air like smoke. Thought of Ellison's tired shoulders. Thought of maintenance workers who hadn't even known how close death had come. Because this isn't a fight, he said. It's a language they respect, and someone has to speak it. Sail rose and moved to the window, staring out at the stars. My people believe strength is proof of worth, she said softly. But when you held that door, you were not strong in the way we mean. Yet you did what our strongest may not have done. Ronan stepped closer. What did you see? She turned, gold eyes bright, endurance, a refusal to accept limits. You risked yourself for strangers. That is not softness. Silence held between them charged. Uncertain, Sel's hand lifted and touched the bandage on his forearm, fingertips. Cool. Survive tomorrow, she said, voice low. I find that I want to speak with you again. Then she left as quietly as she'd come, leaving Ronan alone with the echo of her touch. Noon arrived too quickly. Cargo Bay 3 had been cleared into an arena, equipment stacked at the walls, floor padded, observers lining the edges. Humans clustered tight, faces tense. Valori stood in ordered ranks, calm as if attending ceremony rather than violence. Ronan stripped off his shirt, bruises blooming across his ribs and shoulders. He heard murmurs from the Valor's surprise. Perhaps that he'd come visibly battered. Theron entered opposite, bare-chested, skin like polished armor. He looked carved from some ancient war myth. Captain Ellison approached Ronin. "You can back out." Ronin shook his head. "No," she sighed, then managed a grim smile. "Try not to die. The paperwork would be unbearable." A Valori elder stepped into the center priestess Nara Zenth, efficient of their rites. Her voice carried like a bell. "On a duel, submission or unconsciousness. Yield without shame. This is not death, this is measure." Both fighters agreed. Then Nara's hand lowered. Theron moved. The first strike hit Ronin's ribs like a meteor. Air fled his lungs. Pain flashed bright and sharp. He staggered back. Valori voices rose approval. Humans went silent. Theron pressed, fists blurring. Ronin blocked what he could, but every impact drove needles through his still healing arms. Theron fought like someone who'd never needed a second plan. Speed and power, clean, direct, inevitable. Ronin didn't try to match it. He moved, slipped, redirected, took hits and kept breathing. Minutes passed, then more. Theron's breathing roughened. His strikes stayed heavy, but the gaps between them widened. Ronin noticed stand shifted. He stopped reaching for a fence and began forcing Theron to work. Guard up, feet moving, letting Theron burn energy for every inch. Ronin's chest strained. His leg went numb after a brutal kick. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. But he didn't fall. 10 minutes, 15. The Valori ranks grew quieter, confusion spreading. Their champion was supposed to finish this quickly. That was the story. Humans began to hope slowly, carefully, like people who'd been punished for hope before. 20 minutes. Theron slowed. Sweat made his skin shine. His explosive style began to cost him. Ronin, wrecked and bleeding, kept advancing not with power, but with relentless volume. A jab to the body, a low kick, another jab. He wasn't trying to break Theron with one perfect blow. He was drowning him in the simple truth that humans were built to keep going. 25 minutes. Theron threw a wild swing, frustration driving it. Ronin ducked under and stepped close, inside the Valori reach. He drove his shoulder into Theron's chest and swept his leg. They crashed down, on the ground. Speed mattered less. Technique mattered more. Ronin locked an arm around Theron's neck, cinching a choke. Theron thrashed, terrifying strength surging. Claws scraping Ronin's already torn forearms. Ronin held. Yield. He rasped. Just yield. Theron's struggles weakened. Then his hand tapped twice against the mat. Submission. Ronin released immediately and rolled away, gasping. Silence filled the bay like vacuum. Priestess Nara lifted her hands. The human has won. Theron Kier submits. The measure is complete. For a breath, nobody moved. Then one Valori performed their salute right hand to forehead. Then another. Then dozens. Even Theron, still on his back, raised his hand in respect. Humans erupted. As medics converged, Ronin's eyes found sail in the crowd. She stared at him as if she'd just watched a new star ignite wonder and something deeper, harder to name. Their gaze held a heartbeat. Then the crowd swallowed him. A week later, with Ronan limping through light duty and bruises fading into yellow, the sabotage began. Small malfunctions, power flickers, air scrubbers glitching. The kind of problems old stations developed like aches in bad joints, Matteo said. Ronan was seeing ghosts. Ronan didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in patterns. Security footage finally gave him one. A Valori maintenance tech appearing near each incident. Unauthorized access. Short, precise visits. Name, Vorik Kerval. Matteo frowned. Kerval. That's Thorin's line. Ronan's stomach sank. Before they could report, the alarm screamed again, different tone, different weight, critical. Reactor malfunction. Evacuate to shelters. This is not a drill. They sprinted to command. Captain Ellison stood surrounded by catastrophic redouts. Face strained. Cooling systems sabotaged, she said. Manual controls locked out. 20 minutes until we go critical. Ronan's blood iced over. Where's Vorik? He tracked him engineering Sector 12. Deep in restricted shielding. Matteo hissed. If he's barricaded in there. We can't breach with explosives near a reactor, Ellison snapped. So we go around. Maintenance tunnels. Ronan was already moving. At the corridor junction, Sale appeared with Theron at her side. Vorik is my blood, Theron said, voice heavy with shame. This dishonor is mine to stop. Sale stepped forward, eyes fierce. I know the tunnel network. I will guide you. Ellison didn't hesitate. Go. Stop him. Whatever it takes. They plunged into narrow passageways where the station's bones showed wiring, conduit, old repair tags. Thorin's height became a disadvantage. He had to duck and twist. Sail moved like water through cracks. They reached an access panel. Voices on the other side. Vorik wasn't alone. Ronan cracked the panel and slipped through with the others. Reactor hum vibrated in his teeth. Vorik stood at the main console with 3 conspirators, hands flying, when he saw Theron. His eyes widened, then hardened into fanatic fury. Brother, Theron said, this ends. You ended our honor the moment you bowed to a human, Vorik snarled. They are poison. They are people, Theron said, sorrow dragging his words down. Stop this. Vorik drew a plasma cutter, white-hot edge meant for metal, not flesh. The conspirators raised tools like weapons. Ronan stepped forward without thinking, putting himself between Sale and the blade. Killing everyone here won't save your people. He said, it'll make you murderers. Vorik's lips curled. It will prove we will not be softened. It will prove you're afraid, Ronan said, voice steady. Afraid that strength isn't only muscle. Vorik lunged. Theron moved faster, catching Vorik's wrist, twisting until the plasma cutter clattered away. Chaos erupted. Matteo fired a stun pulse. One conspirator dropped. Ronan dodged a wrench swing that would have split his skull. Sale swept an attacker's legs and struck. Pressure points with surgical precision. Theron and Vorik grappled near the reactor housing. Brothers locked in a fight neither could escape. Ronan fought a larger conspirator, fresh, strong, eager. Ronan's shoulder screamed. He didn't need to win. He needed time. Controls. Ronan shouted toward Theron. Vorik broke away, and slammed commands into the console. Warning. Lights flared. Reactor hum rose into a scream. In 5 minutes, Vorak laughed, wild-eyed. This station becomes your tomb. Farron stared at the interface, hands hovering. I do not know how to reverse this human modifications confuse. The sequence. Ronan shoved away from his attacker, stumbling toward the console. Another hit caught him in the chest, nearly dropping him. But he forced himself upright and kept moving. Sale appeared at his side, blood on her forehead, eyes sharp. Manual override is behind that port, she gasped, pointing. Ronan ripped it open with his fingers. Inside, wiring, couplings, emergency lines. Talk me through it, he said. Cell's voice steadied. Blue conduit, coolant, red, pressure release. Both must restore together. Ronan reconnected severed. Coolant lines. Readings dipped but not fast enough. We need the pressure coupling, Sale said. Pointing upward, rotate 90 degrees. Ronan reached his injured shoulder, failed. Arm going dead. Time ticked down. Sale didn't hesitate. She reached past him, longer arms finding the coupling. She twisted. It resisted. I cannot move it. She strained. Ronan placed his good hand over hers. Together they pulled human endurance, valor, strength, both refusing to quit. Metal groaned. The coupling turned. Alarms began to quiet. Reactor scream softened into a hum. Red warnings faded to yellow. They held it steady until the system's automated recovery engaged, until the countdown died. Only then did Ronan realize their hands were still clasped on the coupling, their bodies close, breaths mingling. We survived, Sale whispered. Yeah, Ronan said, voice rough. We did. Behind them, the fighting stopped. The conspirators surrendered as the reactor stabilized. Station security flooded in. Captain Ellison took one look at the scene and let out a breath. That sounded like she'd been holding it for years. Vorak was dragged away, still muttering about honor. Theron watched him go with grief carved into his face. Later, in the medical bay, Dr. Park reset Ronan's dislocated shoulder, while Sale stood nearby, refusing treatment until he was cared for. This is becoming a hobby, Dr. Park grumbled, snapping the joint back into place. Ronan bit down on a sound. Cell's cool hand found his, squeezing once quiet comfort. The investigation took days. The trial took longer. Vorak was sentenced to a penal colony. Theron testified against his own blood, voice steady even when his eyes weren't. And through it all, Sale kept coming back not just as an attaché, gathering cultural notes, but as someone who wanted to understand the human who refused to break. They talked in the observation lounge about earth storms and Valory poems, about fear disguised as tradition, about what strength meant when no one was cheering, until the message from Cell's family arrived. Ronan found her in the lounge, shoulders trembling, tears tracking down skin that shimmered darker with grief. A data pad glowed in her hands. They demand I return, she said, voice hollow. My father says if I refuse, I am disowned, exiled. Ronan sat beside her, chest tight. What do you want? Sale stared into the stars as if searching. For an answer written in light. I want my people to change, she whispered. I want them to see what I see. But wanting is not the same as paying the price. Ronin swallowed. Then choose what makes you whole, not what I want, not what they want. Sale was silent a long time. Then she stood. I need to speak with Ambassador Vera Shen. An hour later she returned accompanied by Ambassador Vera and Theron, who looked like he'd carried a mountain and decided to set it down. Vera's voice was formal. Ronin Cade, Sale Vexari has requested asylum under human protection. Ronin's heart stuttered. Sale, no. You can't burn your entire life for me. I am not burning it, Sale said, stepping forward, eyes fierce through tears. I am choosing a new path, one that honors both worlds. Theron lifted his hand to his forehead in salute. And I will speak before our High Council. He said, I will argue our laws are fear wearing the mask of purity. They won't listen. Sale whispered, then we make them, Theron said softly. Change begins when someone refuses to be silent. Months passed. The debate raged across Valori world's traditionalists furious, progressives emboldened. Witnesses from Arcadia spoke. Vera pushed. Theron endured public scorn and kept speaking anyway. Finally, the council delivered a compromise, not full acceptance, but an opening. Cross-species partnerships would no longer mean exile, though. Privileges might be lost, imperfect, but real. Sale read the message in Ronin's quarters, hands shaking. I can stay, she whispered, without becoming a ghost to my own people. Ronin wrapped his arms around her carefully, mindful of how slender she was and how much she'd carried. Are you happy? Sale looked up, gold eyes reflecting starlight. I am with you, she said. Yes, I am happy. A week later, the treaty was signed on Arcadia Station beneath the same cold stars that had watched everything begin. Captain Ellison found them afterward, Ronin and Sale standing together at the window, fingers intertwined like a promise. You two did more for peace than my entire diplomatic packet, she said. A rare softness in her face. Ronin tried to deflect. We just didn't quit. Sel's smile transformed her, turning her from composed diplomat into something radiant and alive. Sometimes, she said quietly, endurance is the bravest strength. Outside the observation glass, ships from both civilizations crossed paths without weapons primed, without fear written into their formation. Ronin squeezed Sel's hand. So what now? Sale leaned her head against his shoulder, skin shifting to a gentle shade that meant warmth. Now, she said, we write a new story. Not human, not Valori. Something stubborn enough to hold open doors that were never meant to stop.